Guys, our next guest is definitely one of the sharpest minds when it comes to combat analysis. He knows excellent work from his channel, Full Reptile, with his phenomenal fight previews, reactions, and live streams, as well as great work on BT Sport with a Dan Hardy breakdown show. He now prepares to step back in the ring and make his official return. But before he does that, he joins us once again to help preview UFC 269, the one and only Dan Hardy. Welcome back. I feel like, this is the official Australian home for Dan Hardy. This is where you come in, you put your feet up, you enjoy some of the surf, some of the goodness that Australia has to offer.
Suits me, guys. I always feel welcome here, so I'll keep returning as long as you welcome me in.
100%, man. Always. We love chatting with you, Dan. So like Dennis mentioned, it looks like you were, I think you still are, but you were set to return, make your big comeback in the boxing ring against Tyron Woodley. Last time you dropped a bombshell on us that you basically had a contract, you'd signed it, you're waiting for him to sign his. Now, last night, we're finding out that it looks like Tommy Fury is out and Tyron Woodley is potentially stepping in against Jake Paul. All right, first things first, man. What was your reaction? How do you take the news?
I'm a bit disappointed because I was looking forward to the Jake Paul Tommy Fury fight, to be honest. But I'm glad that Tyron's getting his rematch. I mean, it's a second opportunity that he may not have got otherwise. But it also makes sense as to why he's gone a bit quiet with the other promoter that we've been speaking to, because they probably had him in reserve, thinking one of these guys might fall out anyway. But the fight that we were talking about is in March, so there's still time to make that happen. I'm talking with One Championship as well at the moment, as well as another organization which has been contacted me. So I've got a few options. I'm not sure which direction I'm going yet, but I'll certainly be watching the Tyron Jake Paul fight. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I hope he pulls the trigger this time. So get one back, then he can set up the trilogy fight.
The trilogy fight, but that means we don't see Dan Hardy versus Tyron Woodley till 2035. We might. It'll be like Andre the Giant. We might need little carts to help you guys get to the ring before the fight happens. What are you expecting though from this rematch realistically? I know you mentioned you're wondering if he's going to pull the trigger. Do you think it looks much different to that first one?
Yeah, I think he'll be a bit more aggressive. Certainly in the opening rounds, I think he'll try and crack him with that shot that was it the fifth round he caught him with and nearly put him through the ropes. Like that's a. If he'd have thrown a few more of those kind of shots, he might have got him out of there, before the final bell and not needed the judges at all. So, I mean, I think that's the smart way to go. But I also think Jake Paul will be very smart in the way that he's going to go about this. And I also think that he was most likely going to try and tie up Tommy Fury when he stepped in close and started working the body. I was expecting him just to kind of start overhooking and tying him up. He might start trying to do the same thing with Tyron Woodley. He might just kind of wear him out. Instead of moving, just hold him and tie him up, tire him out that way. So he's, he stays safe till the later rounds when he can start landing a few of his own shots.
Before we talk UFC 269, I just have to say this is nice. Like here you are, people think that, Dan and Tyron, they don't really like each other. They've had the DMs and this and that. But here you are openly rooting for Tyron Woodley. Like, it sounds like you're, got his back to a degree.
I'm just indifferent. I really, people misunderstand a lot of the time when they watch my breakdowns and stuff. Like I like to poke and prod people, especially when they're reacting, but I don't really care. I mean, Tyron can say what he likes about me. If he wants to fight, I'll fight him. And as long as he knows that's a fact, then I'm happy. He knows that there's a contract on the table, and if he doesn't sign it, then he knows the reasons why, and they're between him and himself. So, I'm good from my part. I have no issue with Tyron. I hope he gets one back. I hope he gets one back, and then he gets the trilogy match because, hey, why not? I mean, that stuff is going to pay the bills, certainly more than his rap game is. Let's be honest. And why not swim around this pool a little bit longer and catch a few paychecks? I'd honestly like to see the same thing for Kevin Lee, to be honest. I think you could quite easily drop Kevin Lee in this mix. He might be a bit smaller, but I'd like to see him get one of those paychecks, or maybe the Mike Perry direction. There's money out there for these boys now, and people forget that they're prize fighters. Go and get that money.
I really like Kevin Lee. I want to see him do good things. I was really sad to see him out of the UFC.
Absolutely. One of the funniest things the other week was, Cass, when I was on social media, I was on Instagram. I think MMA Fighting or someone put out a post, and Tyron Woodley commented on it, and then underneath the comment I saw Dan Hardy respond with a frozen one, and I was like, it knows no bounds. It knows no bounds. It's everywhere you go. Just quickly before we get off your return, I know we had like Diego Sanchez was in the mix, but now obviously he's dealing with some health problems. Is it primarily John Wayne Parr that we're looking at now for the return? Do you think he's the lock? Or are there any other names that you're sort of looking at right now, Dan?
That's the one that makes the most sense at the moment. That's the one I'm discussing with One Championship. It's an ideal first fight. I know John wants it. I have a lot of respect for him. It would be a really tough test. I'd be stepping there. It's been a long time since I've fought Muay Thai, and I've never fought anybody on the level of John Wayne Parr. Of course, there are some things that would be in my favor. It's the small gloves, which, I think that suits me more. I think my reactions are a little bit quicker. And my head movement's a bit sharper when it comes to the smaller gloves, but at the same time, it's a whole new thing. We're in a circular cage, and I'm excited to try it. I've just received a pair of extra large One Championship gloves, so I'll be testing them out in the bag tomorrow. But yeah, that's the one that makes the most sense. The reason I was discussing boxing matches and stuff is because the John Wayne Parr fight would be down at his weight class, which means I have to get my ass in shape and lose about 20 pounds, which I don't mind doing at all. Absolutely out of respect for stepping in there with him, at his weight class at his best. But if I can catch Tyron Woodley or someone like that on the way down, make a few quid in the back pocket and support the next training camp, then why not?
Extra large gloves, Dan. You know what they say. But yeah, no.
The Brock Lesnar of one.
A lot of happy women in the UK. No, but I'm happy for you, man. You and John Wayne Parr. That's awesome. Looking at UFC 269 and the main event between Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier, what was the biggest thing you learned about Charles Oliveira and his come-from-behind win against Michael Chandler? Because obviously the biggest criticism over Charles was that, he folds and he breaks later on in the fight. And it was just this amazing example of people thinking he was out of the fight and then coming back and then finishing a guy like Chandler, something that even Justin Gaethje didn't do. It was actually a pretty remarkable fight looking back on it. How much do you think that helps against a guy like Poirier, who's really known for his durability, especially at 155?
I think it's a huge asset. There's definitely going to be some tough moments in this fight with Poirier the longer it goes, because, as you know, Poirier can punch his way back into any match. The difference with Charles Oliveira, though, is, and this goes the same for both guys. I actually recorded my war room earlier today on this very fight, and I was talking about the same thing. Like, they're both coming up from featherweight. They've both been, although they're both solid lightweights right now. They've both benefited from moving up that weight class, and I think both of them, their games when they were at featherweight weren't nearly as strong as they are now. They're lightweights. The difference is Charles Oliveira. I think he's now just realizing himself as a striker as well. The turning point I think was the Nick Lentz fight, because he'd already subbed him a couple of times and he kind of went out there to make a point of stopping him with strikes. But now he's a lightweight. He seems to be able to take a shot better. He seems to be physically and mentally in a much better place. And even when he has a tough round like he did against Chandler, he doesn't start struggling mentally because he's struggling physically. He doesn't feel like he's outmatched and outmuscled by these guys. And technically, we know he can hang with everybody, because as much as we talk about wrestling being the main component of a mixed martial arts fighter, that can also be offset by being a really good striker and a really good jiu-jitsu player. Like, you can be as good a wrestler as you want, but if you've got someone that bookends that skill, then you've got to pick your poison, and both are going to taste pretty bad. Now, what we know about Dustin Poirier is that he's a banger with good takedown defense. We know he's got grappling, of course, but on Charles Oliveira's level, probably not. He might have just enough to stay out of danger, but I don't think he's got enough to contend with him in that range. So we know what we're going to get from Poirier. With Charles Oliveira, he can take it a couple of different routes. He can put it on you until you level change, or he can, let you come to him and decide what he's going to snare you in. But there's no doubt he's a lethal individual, and both of these guys are much better at lightweight than they were at featherweight. And I think that's I think that's due to maturity in their game, as well as the physical assets that they've got now.
And we've seen Dustin has sometimes struggled to sort of get on the inside of guys, Dan. So he uses his shift combinations to do so. How well do you think that will work against Charles, especially with Charles's new crisp striking and the fact he has much better leg kick defense than somebody like a Conor McGregor, for example?
Yeah, I mean, well, this one's southpaw v orthodox as well, so that makes the calf kick a bit more dangerous for Poirier to use. I mean, for both of them, but I don't really think that we're going to see too much of that from Charles Oliveira anyway. He might throw some inside low kicks, and try and upset the balance of Poirier when he's punching, but I still think Poirier will be trying to target the calf. He's just got to make sure his head's off the center line. I mean, the thing with Charles Oliveira, if you rush him, he might back up, but he also might level change. And even if you sprawl on that level change, you might end up in his butterfly guard, and then you're being swept and you're on bottom position nonetheless. It's very risky to get charge into Charles Oliveira. He's also got very sharp striking as well, so he can also pick you off on the way in. He's got a lovely uppercut and left hook, and we know he can jam people in the midsection with that front kick, which is going to be a real problem for Poirier all the way through this fight. So the shifting is really beneficial, but he can't be coming in just straight on a line, like he did against Max Holloway when he kind of bounds. I call it Ninja Warrior with the guys at the gym. That Tony Ferguson does it as well, where they bound from one side to the next. It's that kind of footwork will be beneficial, because it'll be difficult for Charles Oliveira to level change onto a clean set of hips and take him down, or B, catch him with straight shots on the way in. Poirier's footwork is a huge benefit to him, especially because Charles Oliveira doesn't really switch his stance. So if Poirier is moving forward, he can put Oliveira on the back foot pretty quickly. But still, there is that risk of the level change, and Oliveira doesn't really mind where he lands,
Do you think a lot of this fight may take place on the ground? Like during those shift combos, like Dustin is open for the takedown, and Oliveira's got a very good one, and obviously you saw Poirier using those takedowns just to kind of switch things up with Conor McGregor. You got to think he's not going to be doing that with Charles, especially with Charles having such a good guillotine. And then obviously if Oliveira's on top, it's just going to melt rounds away for Dustin Poirier.
This is it, and even if Poirier is able to establish a top position, it's how long he can hold it and whether he's safe even in that position. I mean, Oliveira's got such good butterfly hooks. He uses them to sweep and to elevate, and that's where the benefit in him having those long arms and legs comes into play. Just as when he takes somebody's back, he's able to climb up them, but he's able to wrap around them and lock into them. If he's underneath, he's able to elevate and move and create himself space. I think the more time Dustin Poirier spends on the floor, the worse it's going to look for him. I think he's probably got good enough sub-defense to stay out of danger for a good period of time, but I still don't think it's a risk it's worth taking. I've been kicking around in my head the idea that maybe he'll use it as a surprise tactic because, well, no one's going to expect him to take Charles Oliveira down. But I still don't. I'd still, even as a surprise tactic, think Charles Oliveira is quick enough to catch his neck, or to drag his arm and take his back and choke him out. And I mean, especially if he does it early on in the fight when they're dry, I think Oliveira will wrap him up and squeeze the life out of him. I think Poirier needs to stay on the ends of his punches. Everything needs to stay away from Charles Oliveira apart from the leather between his knuckles and his gloves.
It's interesting because obviously, Dustin is great as the fight goes on. Charles is already doing media week interviews and saying he doesn't want the fight to go long. He's not looking to get into this championship rounds. It's a real dynamic and kind of tells us what we're going to see a little bit from this fight. In terms of who you're leaning towards, man, what are you thinking here? Do you believe the champ retains, or do you think we have Anu at the end of the day when it comes to UFC 269?
And just to add to that, do you feel like Charles is a little bit underestimated and maybe not respected enough just because he's kind of a quiet guy, and Poirier is obviously such a, he's so known in the division now, and obviously he's coming off so much momentum of these Conor McGregor wins. I feel like Charles is a little bit overlooked here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when my breakdown show went up, there were a few comments about, people were saying, "Oh, finally someone that's not underestimating Charles Oliveira." I find him very difficult to underestimate, if I'm honest. Anybody that pays attention when he's fighting knows how lethal he is. Like, Dustin Poirier is no doubt a tough, durable veteran. He's a smart individual that's rounded out his game with maturity and has made him a far more effective fighter. And if it goes into the trenches, we know he can fight through hell and he can come out on the other side. The general feeling around Poirier is that, well, if Khabib wasn't in the division at the same time, then Poirier would have been champion. Yeah, for sure. But I think, times have changed now, and Oliveira is the champion, and I think he would be very difficult for anybody to get the belt off. I think skills-wise, Oliveira is a better martial artist all round. Whether Dustin Poirier can apply it better because he's been swimming in this top pool for a bit longer, I don't know. But I've seen no reason to believe that Charles Oliveira won't be champion by the end of the fight. It wouldn't surprise me if he's able to back Poirier up against the fence and beat him up a little bit and then catch his neck on the way in, something like the Kevin Lee fight. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if Oliveira decides to go offensive and take Poirier down and kind of beat him up and maul him like he did Tony Ferguson. It's a hard fight for Poirier. He's got heart and he's got heavy hands, and once he gets in the swing of things and finds his rhythm, if Charles Oliveira has not been prepared for those championship rounds, then for sure Dustin Poirier can take that belt. But skill for skill wise, from the research I've done, I think Charles Oliveira has got probably a 70 or 80% chance of coming out on top.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And then on the division, I'll hit you with a 2-for-1. In your opinion, was Gaethje the right man to get the next title shot over somebody like Islam? And then now also Islam Makhachev faces Beneil Dariush in February, and with Conor McGregor targeting, an April return to proper sparring and then an immediate title shot in the future, which do you think happens first, Conor's title shot or Islam's title shot?
I think Conor might be a little overzealous in his immediate return. He's looking thick and heavy at the moment. He's a good way from making 155, in my opinion. I think if anything, we're going to see him at 170 fighting in maybe a Nate Diaz trilogy or something like that. That's in my mind what really sells. And it also wouldn't surprise me if the UFC want to get that done before Nate's contract runs out, because he's only got one fight left as far as I understand. Regarding the other matchups, Dariush against Makhachev is really going to be the final test for Makhachev. If he comes through that one, especially if it's impressive, and I know there's an additional bonus for him to get a finish, if I read that correctly somewhere, there's no doubt he's got to be in for a title shot next. So I guess it just depends on how the timing syncs up with Gaethje and if they can get him in between. It makes sense for Gaethje to get a title shot. I would love to see him up in that mix, and I think that I don't really think it matters on the order. Makhachev's going to get there anyway. I wouldn't be that disappointed if Gaethje gets there first. I don't really think it changes anything. If Makhachev is going to be the champion, I think he beats all of these guys, and that's what we're hoping to see in these next couple of matchups. Dariush is a really tough test for him. But after that, it's going to be, either the winner of Poirier Oliveira or Gaethje, and I'm happy with any of those matchups.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you got Gaethje, who's fought Khabib, Dustin fought Khabib. They've got that experience, and I wonder how much that's going to contribute to if they have to fight Islam, just from the perspective of having to deal with that elite wrestling and strike and grappling and that pressure and sort of having another crack at it. I wonder how that would look like. But let's talk about the other big fight, man. You got Amanda Nunes defending her belt against Julianna Pena, which is interesting because Pena is the first wrestler Amanda's faced since Miesha Tate. Julianna likes to jab her way into range, or at least use her left side punches and then get her opponent against the cage and use the body lock to get those trips and take it to the ground. When she's going up against Nunes, who has so many ways to punish you on the way in, how do you think she goes in this fight?
I think it's a very difficult fight for her. There's a 10-fight difference in their records, and Nunes has 10 more knockouts. That tells me that she's a more powerful fighter, more explosive fighter, probably stronger in the clinch. I think they occupy the same space in a lot of ways. They've both got good straight punches. They both throw with venom. They both stay focused on their opponents as well, which is something that I very much appreciate about their style. When they clinch, I think Nunes takes over. You know, Julianna Pena's takedown offense is not great. It's a low number. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's below 50% though. And Amanda Nunes' takedown offense is 84%. So you've got to think that Nunes is going to win those grappling exchanges. And when it hits the floor, again, you know, both of them are really mainly focused on ground and pound to take in the back. I just feel like Nunes is probably a bit better and a bit less interested in finishing by rear naked choke. She's more interested in hitting them from a position where they can't see where the punches are coming from. You know, you think back to all of the submission wins on Nunes's record. They were all, you know, rear naked chokes where she's landed a few shots, her opponent's killed and turned away, and she's jumped on their back. That's how she won the belt from Miesha Tate. And the Megan Anderson fight would have been very similar had she not got the arm on the outside of the hook. You know, she ended up with the reverse triangle. I think they're very, very similar fighters in a lot of ways. I just think Nunes is further along. I think she's a better expression of what Julianna Pena should be if she has another 8 or 10 fights.
Yeah, it's a tough one, especially with Nunes being so dominant. Like, these fights sometimes, with no disrespect, do feel like kind of formalities for Amanda. Like, you look at the website on the rankings, and it's just like Amanda's everywhere. She's the top of the bantamweight division, featherweight. There's no one in the featherweight division, so it's just the Amanda Nunes division, pound for pound, GOAT in the women's division. So I still look forward to it though, and see if Julianna can potentially surprise us. Speaking of surprises, nothing worse than when you've got, like a Netflix or HBO Max or Stan or any streaming service, and all these people are talking about a particular movie or show. Maybe it's an old one, and then you go on and you're like, oh, this isn't available in your region. And you can see that, yeah, it's available in other regions, but not your own. I remember I told the story last time about when my mates and I were in Bali. I got sick and I had to stay in the hotel for a little while. We got hooked on Breaking Bad. I took a massive hiatus, got back into Breaking Bad, very, very much hooked, more hooked than the people in the show themselves. And then we came back to Australia, and it's like, oh, no Breaking Bad on Netflix. And it's like, why? Why is that? Well, because only Indonesian Netflix had Breaking Bad. So whip out your trusty VPN, turn it on. All of a sudden, hey, computer thinks you're in Indonesia. Bang, Breaking Bad or whatever show you want. Isn't that right, Dennis?
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I mean, just like you, I'm always trying to find these shows or stream stuff live from the US, things like AEW or the Shaq Life, which is back on TNT, or trying to stream even like my NBA or NHL and stuff. But the problem is you're clicking through all these different pop-ups. You're trying to get to the screen. The thing won't open. You got to go through 5 different streams. By the time you're done, they know where you live. They know all your dirty little habits. They're basically on their way to come and get you. Why not avoid that? Why not be secure in the way that you watch your internet? Why not be secure in the streaming services and the things that you can check out over the holiday break? And there is only one VPN that does all of that, and that is NordVPN. You can get NordVPN's crazy holiday season deal. Go to nordvpn.com/submission or use code submission. Get up to 73% off your NordVPN plan plus a free month. Check it out today. It's the equivalent of buying a cup of coffee every month. Small price to pay for premium cybersecurity. And by the way, guys, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee if NordVPN is not for you. So there's no risk. Go check it out now. And Cass, I mean, we're just talking about Tyron Woodley having another crack at Jake Paul with Dan Hardy just before. How about this? The odds are in through my bookie. Jake Paul a -200, Tyron Woodley a +160. There is only one place to go to make your money on that fight, and that is, of course, at our friends at MyBookie. You can double your first deposit with a code word submission. And, of course, UFC 269 coming up this weekend. The only place to go to make some serious cash. These guys are throwing out all sorts of crazy prop bets all the time. Make sure to follow them on social media and make sure to go to MyBookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with the code word submission at MyBookie, Cass.
That's right. MyBookie for life, just like the NWO. Also, ho, 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 everybody. I know we've been banging on about it for a while, but like it's December. The holidays are around the corner. Have you got your gifts yet? Or are you, like a lot of people, like like me most years, freaking out, going, shit, I love my family, kind of, but what do I get them for gifts? You know, you rack your brains, you go to the department stores, you know, you catch, 60 new strains of coronavirus. Why not make things easier? The future is now, all right? The Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0, the best grooming tool on the market. Hey, everybody needs to trim down there. Doesn't matter who you are. Or you can use it for anything. You can trim, I use it to trim my beard, arm hair, leg hair, whatever you want. Anything. 7,000 RPM of pure power LED light. It's waterproof. It's got the skin safe technology, so it won't cut you. It's got different guards for different lengths and textures. It's got the travel lock, wireless charging dock. You can do it in the shower. What more do you want? It is the pound for pound greatest grooming tool in the world. And for sake of ease and gift giving, they've got the Performance Package 4.0, which comes with the Lawnmower 4.0 itself, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver anti-chafing ball deodorant, moisturizer, and toner. You're set, your family's set, and they got a sexy deal on top of that. Isn't that right, Dennis?
Yeah, man, 20% off with the code word submission, get free shipping, and of course, 20% off with the code word submission. Get onto it today. It's like a gift for yourself. They look good, they smell good, there's no messes. It's so easy to put away and charge, you guys.
And you get a bag and free underwear. How could I forget?
Free underwear, bag. I mean, this thing just sorts anything out for your bro, for your partner, for your son, whoever it is, for the other man in your life who you're trying to hide from your husband. Keep him clean, keep him smelling great with Manscaped.
Yeah, that's right. The clean holiday season. Tell you what, one of the most fascinating fights on the card is actually Kai Kara-France versus Cody Garbrandt in Cody's flyweight debut. Kai made it clear to us that he feels like Cody's chin, may not be the same after the cut. He says he can't see how it would be. There's also the very legitimate question about Cody's power and how that translates at flyweight, which is very interesting. We saw it didn't really go that well for TJ Dillashaw, but how do you think Cody looks boiled down at 125?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. As far as I understand, he's never been particularly big as a bantamweight anyway. So he might not look too different, but you've got to wonder what that's going to take out of his power and his resilience to take shots. I think this is a good opportunity for Kai Kara-France to put a big name on his record. To be honest, I'm a fan of Cody and his fighting style, but I do feel like that he's stepping down into a division where we don't know how he's going to perform, and he's fighting a young up and coming kid that's got really good striking, really fast, well-polished combinations. Sometimes he gets a bit drawn into a scrap, but that's really the only way I see for Cody to find his way into this. I think Kai Kara-France has got really good footwork. He's a very measured striker, and I think that Cody gets frustrated when he misses, and I think that Kai Kara-France can capitalize on that frustration. Draw him in and counter him. And then, test his chin, see where his conditioning's at, and see where his ability to absorb those shots is at. Now he's at a different weight class. Yeah,
fascinating. And then also you've got Kai, and he's got his history with Brendan Moreno, and he's obviously very confident that in a rematch things will go differently. And then, obviously if Cody gets it done, we've got a very exciting addition to the division. So, but man, it's crazy just imagining like with Cody's past issues, how he would do against somebody like Moreno and Figueiredo as well. So very interesting one there. Just last one I wanted to ask you about, Dan, before we let you go, and that's obviously Sean O'Malley returning against Raulian Paiva, who, isn't the most technical fighter, but he's very scrappy, he's very durable, and he kind of feels like the perfect style matchup for O'Malley. We saw Kyler Phillips' speed and footwork give Paiva a few problems early on, but how much of a key will patience be for O'Malley? Because we saw against Chris Matino, O'Malley wasn't able to get him out of there, not through any fault of his own. Chris is just, obviously an indestructible alien, and that's the reason why. But O'Malley was kind of forced to show his composure, which he did. And I almost feel like this might be a similar situation here.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it will be a good test of to see whether that lesson's been learned now. I mean, the thing is with Paiva, he is a bit flat-footed. He does kind of hang on his back leg a little bit and let the fight come to him. But that's because, he's got that kind of bring it attitude. And it's good to have a bring it attitude, but unfortunately, sometimes you're going to take it to them. And Sean O'Malley's going to bring it to him in dribs and drabs when he feels like it, and not overextend himself. That's where O'Malley's very good. He's got good footwork, drifting in and out of range, giving his opponent odd looks that they're going to bite on and then swing because they think he's going to be there, and then they miss. I think that's going to be a problem for Paiva in this fight. This is. You've got to think this is an ideal test for Sean O'Malley, but this has been positioned so he opens the main card with a bang, and you've got to think that Paiva's been kind of positioned in this situation because they expect a particular outcome. That like Sean O'Malley's an excellent fighter, but he's also a huge money earner for the UFC. So, like, for me, this is a fight where they expect Sean O'Malley to come out on top. So if I try and unpick how, I think he just kind of dances around, skirts around the octagon and just picks him off from a distance and makes him look quite slow, gets him frustrated, and then runs him onto something. Slicker striking, a bit more measured, a bit more patient, and not quite as willing just to stand there and trade shots. That's going to be a good night for Sean O'Malley, I think.
Just on him, where do you sit on him as a possible future contender? Are you sold? And what do you think of his sort of business mindset where he basically is game to fight anybody, but realizes there's sort of 0 point of fighting guys highly ranked such as Dominic Cruz or Frankie Edgar until he's getting paid enough to fight those guys?
I think he's a smart kid. I always like a character. I always like a personality. And it seems pretty genuine. I know the Raptors have spent some time with him and they like him a lot. And I know he's in contact with those guys. They message back and forth and stuff. So it's not like he's not like a superstar. He's not gotten too big for himself.
He doesn't want to message back and forth with the Raptors. They're the greatest. We message back and forth with them all the time.
They just scratch at the screen. I don't know how they type. They really like him, and he's a genuine down to earth guy, and I think that. I think the character that he's playing is just the person that he is. He's just a very unique individual, As far as his skills go, I think his skills are very, very diverse, but he's got a good handle on his skills. Let me put it that way. My question with these young guys that start with MMA is how deep does that skill set run? How deep does their understanding of the skills that it takes to be a high-level mixed martial artist run? Because when you look at the guys that are sitting atop the division, look at what Aldo did at the weekend. It's a thing of beauty when you see a fighter that's kind of that stage in their career still have such crisp technique, and that be the thing that's predominantly winning their fights. And that's a depth of experience that Sean O'Malley can absolutely get, but he doesn't quite have yet. He still needs those building fights. I think his mindset's good. Like, work through his contract, get bigger numbers on the ends of those contracts, and then fight the bigger names. It's all good experience in the process.
I like it. It's a bit of a change where, earlier it was just kind of like, I want to show how tough I am and I'll fight anyone anywhere. And, now it's like, hey, man, you got to pay me to fight these guys, which I think is absolutely 100% right. Speaking of genuine guys, how about you, Dan, putting up with half an hour of our delays with our bloody internet and stuff? Really, really appreciate it. Very, very genuine. Follow the man and show the man some love on Twitter and Instagram at Dan Hardy MMA. Of course, the fantastic channel, Full Reptile, with all the best previews, live streams, and reactions. And then, of course, the Dan Hardy Breakdown Show on BT Sport. You've also got The War Room and your book, Full Reptile. Dan, as always, man, love chatting with you. You'll always have a place here. Thanks so much for your time, man.
No worries, guys. Always good talking to you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.
Thanks, mate. Bye.